Hey guys, this is Perks, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
If you want to have some delicious gamer subs like I drink every single day, use the code Thorin, Thorin at gamersubs.gg. Someone else made this list, so it's just ranking of mid laners on EU West all-time tier list maker. And I looked and he has most of them. They also have the name on, which helps. Now, you could argue he's missing one or two here, but generally he's got most of them. We're going to pick who are the greatest of all time. And we're going to give our reasons for all of them. So, S tier, again, if you saw how I do it in CS, I'm going to be very, very harsh. People aren't going to get in the tiers just based off now. They have to be really good. And we're talking about their careers here. So, first of all, we're obviously going to put Caps in there, aren't we? Now, the reasons why, it's not about championships, all that jazz. It's like, if you just look at his body of work, he was the best player over all that time. He also had the longest period as the best player. Even when you could debate, was Perks better than him or more clutch? He was still like very, very good and always in the conversation. Yes, he had times when he was craps. And actually, here's an interesting detail. If you ever checked out my Substack articles about Western players that rocked Asian players, actually, if you go back, I actually think Caps is a little bit overrated in Season 8 and Season 9 for what he did internationally. He had a lot of like normal, very good games, but in terms of like the exceptional go off and carry a whole game versus elite Asians, that actually was more Perks in Season 9. And then in Season 8, it was actually probably more Reckless, actually, that did it at that point in time, I would probably say. So he was maybe a tiny bit overrated in that sense because people acted like he was the Giga God already. I actually think it's probably more after that, like Season 10, once he came back to mid lane onwards, I thought he was extremely solid. And then he had the odd regular split. He wasn't like the best, but he would still be like third best or something, or top two, and just wasn't as good as old Caps, but was still the best player in the league. So yeah, he gets to be the first one. Similarly, I will put Perks. This isn't in order, so where is he? Oh, they did it lowercase for some reason. Right, he was never even though he kept doing the meme from Forgiven of like lane king, he never was like a lane god. His shit was always like, how does he play side lanes? How does he fucking dive other lanes? How does he help the side laners? How does he fucking call a flank late in the game or call a mid-game fight or when to group and when to give up? It's actually why I thought he was exceptional when he played bot lane. He wasn't a traditional ADC, but his understanding of when to roam, when to skirmish, when to aggressively play in and to do a 1v1 all in, etc. was very, very good. He was actually pretty underrated at that role by the end. Yes, maybe it was because of Kaisa and Zaya, but it's also, he just was fantastic the next year. When he got back on Ash, he was still pretty good. So I thought he was just a very good player. So he easily can be S tier on this one. One of the best players of all time, one of the most clutch players of all time. We're going to count generally in EU, by the way. Generally. Like, we'll count their careers, but obviously he only did 1 year in NA. NA doesn't count as much. Like, spoiler, Bjergsen's here, but he's not going to get to be an S tier. So the problem is, how are we doing this? Like, I will count NA, I just won't count it as high. That's the problem. So Bjergsen, when he played in Europe, was never going to be S tier. He was more like a B or an A. And in NA, he was S, but that's NA. I think that mainly would have been an A plus most of the time. Probably had some seasons he was S. So Bjergsen, I'm already seeing as an A player. We'll keep him there for now. Obviously, I'm putting an S Froggen. So if you go back, in 2012, he was the best player in the world. I didn't stutter there. He was the best player in the world. Go read that article also about rocking all the Asians. In 2013, he was very good, but his team couldn't make it to Worlds. In 2014, he was very good and his team did make it to Worlds, and then they lost that one game to Gaboom. Otherwise, they probably would have been in the playoffs and maybe even could have gone to semis. They were actually a pretty decent team. They just lacked a little bit of like mid to late macro calling, but they had some very skilled players. He also, by the way, obviously NA doesn't count for that much, but in NA, he was actually very solid on Echo Fox. You can go check the numbers. And then actually on the first year of Golden Guardians, I think he was like the third best mid laner in the league. I think he was a pretty good player, actually. So for his whole career, he gets to be S because he has like, and we're talking like 3 to 4 years European. NA, we're talking like, 1 or 2 years, but they're not as important. The problem is there's not that many other players that are going to get to be S. So he's the only other one. For the others, the problem is this is where longevity becomes an issue. Like, once upon a time, Alex Sitch would have immediately been S. I actually used to think he was better than Diamond Prox because he could have more impact than Diamond Prox. But for his whole career, probably more like A. I mean, he eventually played in NA, but also wasn't that awesome. He was just good. Like, probably A for now, could even be B once we get to the end. We'll see who else gets on this list. We could do... We've got people who are champions are obviously Febervan, Humanoid, Larson, Expeke. These ones shouldn't even be on there. These are stupid meme ones. Right, so obviously the first name I'm thinking of is Expeke. Right, the issue again here is he actually might not actually be S tier. Like, it feels like an immediate S tier, but then you have to consider things like this. When they won Season 1, he wasn't a mid laner, he was a top laner. In Season 2, he was good, but he wasn't as good as Froggen and Alex 6 for my money. Then in Season 4, he was actually very good. That was probably his best year, even though he sort of formed it in regular splits, but he always came alive in playoffs. He was good internationally. Now, in Season 5 was when he basically was like, already fallen off. Like, if you remember, by the time he got to Worlds, he was just playing fucking Anivia and shit like that. And he wasn't some like amazing mage player. He actually let his game fall off a bit. In Season 6, he just came back because of the PoE thing and the thing with Forgiven and came and swapped in and out there. So he actually didn't have as long a career as people think. Also, even though internationally, yes, he had some very good games over, like, let's see, 2014 to 2013 to 2014. People forget he actually just got completely clapped by Whites in that semi-final against Royal Club. And Whites, for me, is not an all-time great player, but both sides of that Oriana, whatever it was, matchup, he won. He actually clowned on Expeke. So I could also put Expeke to here. And then similarly, Bjergsen, yeah, he played in a worse region, but he had a lot more years, though. Like, Bjergsen was cooking from 2014. I think he got to his best in 2015. Let's say 2015 to 20... I mean, it gets a bit dodgier later, but sort of 2019. But I expect he did play in Europe as well and did go further internationally. This is a tough one. These two are really close for me. Like, they really maybe should be S-, A+, if there was one. We'll leave it like that for the moment, though. Let's see who else we're taking. Carlos actually isn't even as bad as people think. Like, Carlos would probably be C. Once upon a time, at the beginning of the game, he would have been A+ or S-. Then in like Season 2, he's probably still an A because actually he was just clutch on LAN. You go to 2013, he's not that good anymore. He's probably a B or a C+. And then at the end, yeah, he was a bit of a clown when it was Gamers 2. So I'd probably say a C overall, but not as bad as people think. Larson and Humanoid are two I'm thinking of. Nuke. Let's get Nuke out the way because he's a veteran. Mega veteran. Was extremely skilled in the early days, like Season 3, Season 4. If you go to, and even Season 5, if you go to like Season 6 onwards, he's becoming more of like the general, what Faker and Zhao who have become, but he was actually still a fairly skilled player. He was even good in Astralis in, what was that, like beginning of 2022 or something? Could be. He was still pretty good at that point in time. He feels like an obvious A. He actually had a very long career and he was very good, but he probably only had moments he touched being S-. So we'll probably go A for now for that one. Febervan, just because he was around super old school. I always thought he was the second best player on... So would he be second best? Or is that even fair? Like, if we're talking about carries, the main carry was Huni in Fnatic. That's why Reckless was able to come. They were winning without him, and then come and they were winning with him. The second best player probably was Febervan of the carries because he was always like the insurance policy. If you were like scaling mid to late, he would win you the game and you'd have like a LeBlanc game or something where he'd pop off. But for me, I always said he was the worst player that had won the title. This is before Humanoid and Larson. So the problem is he feels like A for most of his career. Like, let's think. We've got like Season 5 on Fnatic. He was very good. Season 6 was where it got a bit more scuffed. Season 7, he was on H2K, but he was actually good. Season 8, he went to Clutch and was good for the first half of the year. Talking like 3.5 years. So that might be A. That might be an A. Oh, it's A or B. That's the two I'm deciding between. So we'll put him A for now and then we'll decide later. Let's see. We'll do the other champions. Right, Humanoid's won twice. The problem he has is he's the ultimate player that flatters to deceive. He has like the really high level when he has a Smurf game and has had some notable international games that were good, but he also can have a really low level domestically and can actually just int the whole game. So he feels like an A, but some of these people eventually, someone's going to have to get bumped to B. Everyone can't be fucking A, can they? So in fact, I might even get more brutal and put Expected there and kick some people to B, but we'll see in a second. Larson, he is the opposite of Humanoid, right? He didn't always have the crazy flourishes at the top end of the ceiling, but man, was his floor good, and for a long time. Remember, we're talking like latter half of season 9, season 10, season 11, season 12, and then like the first half of the next year. We're talking like almost 5 years for Larson. So I think he's going to go to A. He's going to go to A for that one. And remember, these are in no order. We're going to go A there, and we'll consider. We might kick some people down. It's going to be hard, but we might kick them down. Remember, Europe's about mid-laners, boys. This is what we create in Europe. Then we're going to go to... Let's see. Because the next grade of people for me is going to be the Nemesis, Niski, Jizuki, Power of Evil. That's the sort of grade we're going to next. So we'll do Nemesis. Actually, we'll do Niski first. Niski's got a lot of long tenure. Feels like an obvious B player because he sometimes goes A or S-, but that's just occasionally. It's mainly based on teammates. He himself doesn't always want to be the Giga carry, but he can be the Giga throw. I think B's just fair for him for his whole career. He's not quite on the level of the Humanoids Larsons overall for me at their peak, but he's also not down here, and he could actually sometimes be an A player for splits, which is what allowed him to be in good squads. He's obviously been a champion himself now, even though it was a mini split. Nemesis, same story for me. The problem is, remember, didn't he only play like 2 years? Yeah, he only played 2 years, didn't he? So, just not a long enough career. He was good, but he was never like truly elite for me. I think he's more in the Niski class. I think that just makes a lot more sense. Then Power of Evil's probably underrated. I think actually Power of Evil gets to be in the same tier as them. He's more on the Frog and Larson side of like the flaw is what raises you. Flaws, who cares what they wrote on here? I didn't make this list. This is just the names they put. They probably just typoed it. So I think Power of Evil at his prime deserves to be there. Also actually had an underrated run in NA, even though NA is not as important. Maybe put him there for now. And we maybe go... I also feel like Jizuki deserves to be there. I thought he was the guy. Him and Cabo fucking carried those Vitality lineups, bro. Their junglers and their bot lane sometimes just weren't that good. They were carrying. He also was pretty good on EG and NA for me. Also had quite a few years in his career. Pretty good career all in all. We're not going to do everyone here, by the way, but we'll chuck a couple more and then we'll check the tiers. Who else deserves to even be on here? Like Abidagi, I guess, can go C. He was never quite on this level for me. He was always a little bit below. And I always had questions about his macro understanding. Does anyone else even deserve to be here? Like Ryu could go there just for decisive players, but he wasn't really that great, was he? I guess he could go C for now. I don't think Leader played long enough. He really needs to be on this list. Nuclear Int's not really that relevant to me. Selfie was good, but he lost the plot. Sencook's just had those 2 years. Vethio had like the year and a half. I guess we'll put him C for now. Doesn't quite deserve necessarily. Like, if you have the right team around him, he can be B and maybe even touching A. Obviously, at his peak, he was like S- or A+, but that was one meta, unfortunately, one style of team. Yeah, might be it. I don't think we'll put anyone else on this list. I don't think anyone else deserves to be. Right, let's actually sort this list out, though. Because if we're going S tier, the problem is, like, the careers of these two just outmatch these. So maybe everyone needs to move down a bit. Maybe we'll just get really harsh with people. Let's get really harsh. Like maybe Febevan goes to here. Maybe Alexic goes to there because not enough years to be truly elite. Bjergsen can stay there. Humanoid can stay there. Larson can stay there. Does one of these drop to C to go with them? Because I also might say fuck Expect here and put him down. Depends though. Like season 3, season 4, part of season, so that's 2.5 years roughly. That's on the line for me. That's right on the line. Is Niski probably better than those players? Because they also didn't do much internationally. Should Nemesis go down or stay there? I can sort of stay there. Like at their best, they're as good as him. But Larson is better than him. Humanoid is better than him. Nuke Duck at its peak, probably better than him, especially because he actually had smarts in the game, even though I'm not taking just shot calling components. We can't really know things like this. Like could he have gone to NA and just smurfed with mid lane? Maybe. He wouldn't be Bjergsen. Bjergsen's very clutch. I think this is probably a fairer list. I could also have gotten Brutal on Expecke and kicked him down, but I won't do that. I could also have kicked down Humanoid and Nuke Duck and maybe even Larson here, but then how many people are going to be in A? I think this is actually a better distribution. I think this distribution makes a lot more sense. And again, I did not design the names. These are just the names that were available there. Because we're doing their whole careers here. That's why the actual question, most of you, by the way, don't really want ranking of people's careers because that means it has the good part and the bad part and then the longevity skews it. What you really mean is this. Maybe not even just peak game. Like, let's say their best year, who's the best? Now, that would be an interesting discussion, right? If we're doing who's the best on their best year, now we can do a totally different set of names. Like, maybe Alexis can go higher. Maybe Carlos can go higher. Maybe PoE goes lower. Maybe Niski goes lower. You know what I mean? That would be an interesting one. Sonny to my share saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names. Ahmed Hadjou, Mac Pugnatio Rajcula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Tooorin, and you know it. Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are. Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skull Illuminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.